Hello everyone, it's time for another Warhammer 40k battle report. 1500 points of Necrons versus 1500 points of Tyranids. Necrons getting their second showing on the channel and some new units for the Tyranids that you can see in front of us now. We'll go over them properly in a second. Also going to be the last showing of this particular terrain setup. Going to be in a brand new location for whoever it is that plays next time. Anyway, we've already decided the mission and deployment, but we'll get to that later. Let's first go over the army. So you've seen a little bit of them already, but here are the 1500 points of Tyranids. They're being led by a Neurothrope, which is not something that usually happens. Usually it's a Swarmlord every single time. The Neurothrope has the Norn Crown, which increases his synapse range to keep all the lesser Tyranids in check, and he has Psychic Scream as his psychic power. Along with him we have a normal brood of Zoanthropes, who have Catalyst. Behind them, 3 Tyranid warriors, one with a Venom Cannon, they're a Synapse creature as well. Troop choices: 16 or 17 Gaunts, can't remember now, 10 Gene Stealers as well, as is normal, because that's how many are painted. New to the table with only 2 painted, unfortunately, 10 Gargoyles, who are going to be landing on the battlefield from turn 2 onwards. 2 Thornbacks, with the Devourer setup, and I was going to say Adrenal Glands, that's not the one. Enhanced Senses, to improve their ballistic skill to 3. Then we have the Horror-Specs, my favourite Tyranid model ever. He is going to be coming down in a Tyrannocyte, which I believe has 5 Venom Cannons, or Heavy Venom Cannons, whichever ones they are that he can have. Then we have the Trigon Prime, who'll be popping up in the battlefield with the Gene Stealers in tow at some point. And then finally, another new model, we have a Hive Tyrant with wings, Venom Cannon, Heavy Rending Claws, Toxin Sacs, Adrenal Glands, all the trimmings. He also has the Chameleonic Skin, or Chameleonic Mutation, so it's a second relic taken, so it's 1 command point used before the match is started, so they can take 2, and that just means that ranged attacks have -1 to hit him. Close combat still works as normal, but -1 to hit him. He'll be coming down with the Gargoyles at some point. So that is 1500 points of Tyranids. Oh, a quick addendum: the Warlord trait for the Neurothrope is Adaptive Biology, I think it's called. Basically, once he takes damage, any damage he takes for the rest of the game is reduced by 1 to a minimum of 1. And here we have the 1500 points of Necrons. It's the same list as last time, but just to quickly go over it again. It's a Sotek Dynasty, being led by Imhotep, the Storm Lord. He's backed up by the Satan of the Nightbringer, a Overlord with Void Scythe, Cryptek on a Canoptic, or whatever it's called, cloak, so he can fly around. Don't put him in combat, as we learned last time. We have, 12 or 13 Necron warriors in a blob. We have 2 5-man Immortal squads with Tesla, the other of which is now painted as well, thankfully. We've got some Death Marks as they come. We have some Lich Guard as they come with the sword and board setup. We have the Canoptic Spider with Tesla, or particle cannons, whatever it is they can take. The Doomsday Ark as it comes, an Annihilation Barge with Tesla, and then at the back here we have 3 Tomb Blades, and they have Evasion Engrams, which is -1 to hit them with ranged attacks. As far as Warlord trait, Imhotep has the default one, or a set one rather. You can get command points back on a 5 plus and something else. I think reroll a single dice in the game. Also, this is a battalion, the Tyranids is a battalion as well. We'll be back with the deployment type and mission. So for deployment type, we have chosen to do Dawn of War. That's the 12-inch deployment with a total of 24 inches no man's land, as seen here. And the mission, I don't think we've done this one since I started doing battle reports again. The Relic. Usually, like, we kind of house rule when we played the Relic back in the day that the secondary objectives were still in play, First Blood, Lightbreaker, etc. In 8th edition, Eternal War, the Relic mission, there is no secondary objectives. It is purely the Relic, which is started in the middle of the board, which we can show you at deployment. And it's just a case of, if a team controls it at the end of the game, they win. If no one controls it, the team with the model closest gets like a minor victory. And if no one controls it, it's a draw. We're going to try and play it the official way. We're not going to include the secondary objectives, so it's going to be a little bit weird to score this one. But we're going to do it by the book, and it's purely down to controlling the Relic. What would Tyranids want with a Relic? Just got to presume that it's delicious. So here's how deployment is looking. The Necrons are on this side, and we'll take a look at them from the opposing side in a second. For the relic, it's going to be this communication tower here, a little big, but that's just so it stands out a bit more amongst the Tyranid polyps that have appeared. The Tyranids finished deploying first because half their army is in reserve, so they're definitely going first unless Necrons steal initiative, but we'll get to that in a second. As far as deployment goes, the Zoanthropes are in that little ruin there. Then we have the Tyranid warriors and the Gaunts behind them. Over here we have the two Carnifexes, Thornback Carnifexes, and the Neurothrop is kind of hidden right in behind there. I can't quite see. It is there, I promise you. Everything else is in reserve to come in from turn 2 onwards. So from this side of the table, we can see over here with death marks, they're deployed a little bit further back because of the 12 inches limit, but they're going to move up forwards and basically give themselves a nice sniping point on the relic, because literally nothing else matters. They can murder each other, both armies, as much as they want, but it comes down to the relic and infantry catching it. So on that subject, we've got one squad of Immortals there, the large blob of Necron warriors behind them, the Spider, the Overlord, the other Immortals, the Cryptek, the, let's see over here, there's Imhotep up on his little pedestal, the Annihilation Barge over there, the Nightbringer plus the Lich Guard, and then over here on the landing pad thingy we have the Doomsday Ark. So that's as things stand. It's going to be a very bloody grab for that relic in the middle of the battlefield there. All that remains to be seen is whether or not the Necrons steal initiative, and they do not. So Tyranids are getting first turn. At the end of what was quite a brief first turn for the Tyranids, because most of their heavy hitters are not on the field at present, the Gaunts moved up and advanced, and because they're high fleet cracking, they roll 3 for their advance and pick the highest. They got a 6, so they were able to move within 6 of the relic. They're not touching it. You have to hold it, or rather it becomes yours once you're in base-to-base contact with it, with an infantry model that is, and then you can move away, but you can never move more than 9 inches for any reason when you hold the relic. You also can't enter a transport, not that that matters for Tyranids, but in general you're not allowed to enter a transport with the relic. So they're moving closer to it. In the shooting phase, the only guns that were within range on this side of the field was the Venom Cannon from the Tyranid warriors. Shot into the Immortals, missed with both shots. Well, it's D3 shots, they got 2 missed. The Psychic phase, the Zoanthropes cast Catalyst on the Gaunts, so now they'll be ignoring wounds on a 6. Over here, the Neurothrop, who moved up with the two Carnifexes, who count as separate units now, cast Smite on the Doomsday Ark, got a Super Smite, and did 4 wounds, which was okay. Totally forgot to mention that the Tomb Blades were hiding behind the Doomsday Ark, incidentally, because they were out of sight. The Devourers were bringing Leech Worms on each of the Carnifexes, also shot into the Doomsday Ark, and he is down to 5 wounds remaining now. Actually, I just remembered, doesn't Living Metal could have reduced the number of wounds from the Super Smite. It wouldn't have reduced it from these because they do 1 damage per wound. We'll look into that and be back with an amendment. Alright, double checked, I said the wrong rule also, it's not Living Metal. For vehicles it's Quantum Shielding. Irrelevant because you can't use Quantum Shielding against mortal wounds, and Smite causes mortal wounds, so it didn't matter. Oh, it's one of those things though where it's a bit confusing, the distinction between what a wound is and what damage is. Because it just says if you take more than, like if you roll for 4 damage, if you are able to equal or surpass the roll, you ignore the damage. It doesn't mean wounds, right? Because a wound that does a single point of damage multiple times doesn't get affected by Quantum Shielding, but a single wound that does 2+ damage, because that makes it possible that you can roll. Sorry, I said over it before, I meant under it. Either way, it's a confusingly worded rule just because the game is not super consistent with what damage quantifies in terms of wounds and damage caused by wounds. Anyway, didn't matter in this particular instance, it's just a little bugbear of mine, largely because of Disgustingly Resilient. Anyway, that was the Tyranid's first turn. They didn't do super much, they almost took out Doomsday Ark, but that's about it. Wouldn't have mattered even if they had killed it because there's no first blood. Let's move on to Necron's turn 1. At the end of Necron turn 1, the Tyranid side had to bear the brunt of the force of a lot of Tesla and Gauss weapons firing at them. The Death Marks, the Necron warriors, they moved up into position, so did the Immortals with the Overlord and Spider and Annihilation Barge behind them. They all unleashed their fire in a combination of attacks into the Gaunts and the Tyranid warriors. As you can see, the Gaunts have been wiped out. The Tyranid warriors are hanging on, the Venom Cannon using one is on 1 wound. That wasn't just them though. Imhotep called the Storm on the Tyranid warriors, spread to the gaunts to do a little bit extra, did not spread to the zoanthropes. The Satan did antimatter meteor, that's the one, on the gaunts to take out some of them as well. Over the other side over there, the Lich Guard just kind of moved up a little bit. Imhotep stayed still. And then if we come over here, to the other side of the table, the Doomsday Ark, it regenerates 1 wound at the start of its turn because it has living metal, but it's still in its second bracket, so its ballistic skill is 1 worse. But it and the Tomb Blades shot into one of the Carnifexes, the Thornback Carnifexes, I do that every time, and killed it. They're a separate unit though, so this Carnifex is still okay and free to move. But yeah, a lot of Tyranids go wiped out there. It's a good job that in turn 2, they are getting a lot of backup. At the end of Tyranid turn 2, the backup did indeed arrive, although there was some horrific rolling when it came to trying to make 9-inch charges, because the units have appeared to have largely had to set up their minimum distance away from an enemy, which is 9 inches. Anyway, the only exception was the Trigon Prime, which just popped up near the relic. The Gene Stealers have filtered out. He shot his electric containment spines at the Immortals over here. The surviving Tyranid Warrior also shot at them, and the Zoanthropes did smite on them. Only resulted in 2 dead out of all that, which may get back up when we start the next Necron turn. The Gargoyles opted to drop down here, and they shot into the Tomb Blades, and I think they killed 1. Well, actually, you know what? Those Zoanthropes did not do smite because they did Catalyst on the Gene Stealers. I'm thinking of this Zoanthrope, which did smite on the Doomsday Ark again and only did 1 wound this time, sadly. The Carnifex hopped up over the rocks. He shot at the Tomb Blades, did 1 wound, went in, did another wound, I think. Yeah, I think the Gargoyles only did 1 wound. They were a little bit disappointing. Either way, the end result was 1 Tomb Blade entirely dead, 1 Tomb Blade on 1 wound remaining. If we just come around a quarter circle here, the Flying Hive Tyrant dropped down behind here, missed with his heavy venom cannon against the back of the Doomsday Ark, very disappointing. Even more disappointing, he rolled a 2 and a 1 for his charge. And even with a reroll, command point reroll, would not have made it. Very disappointing. On the other end of the table, the Tyrannocyte dropped off the Horror Specs. The Horror Specs used its Grasping Tongue on the Necron Warriors and missed, then attempted his charge, rolled a 2 and a 1. So, couldn't make the charge. Didn't take any damage from the returning Overwatch, thankfully. The Tyrannocyte, because it's not well, it has instinctive behaviour because it's not in synapse range, there we go, that's what I'm looking for, has to shoot at the nearest target. The death marks of the nearest target, and he's hitting on 5s, I think it was, with his 5 venom cannons. He got 4 hits, 4 wounds, and then he only needed a 2+ to wound, left the dice where they landed, 4 1s. 4 1s. So unfortunately, the Tyranids, they've got a lot of big monsters on the field now, everything is on the field. But they killed a Tomb Blade and a half, Doomsday Ark wounded, and 2 Immortals that might be about to get back up. Disappointing, they could have done a lot more. On the plus side though, the Necrons will ignore all the big monsters on the field at their peril as we go into their turn 2. At the end of Necron's turn 2, they continue to unleash a barrage of fire on the only infantry unit remaining for the Tyranids to stop them being able to move the relic at all. So a combined fire from the Death Marks, the 2 Immortal Squads, one of which came back on resurrection rolls, the Necron Warriors as well, who did move up a little bit to make the Horror Specs have to work a little bit. They all fired into the surviving Tyranid Warrior, who had been there, and the Gene Stealers, and they have all been wiped out. So the Tyranids can no longer physically move the relic. They can, however, at least go for a draw or a win by having a model either closest or equidistant to it by the end of the game. In terms of other shooting over here, the Spider failed to wound the Horror Specs. The Annihilation Barge did a lot of work on the Gene Stealers. The Satan of the Nightbringer did 2 wounds to the Neurothrope with his Gaze of Death before moving into close combat. In close combat, the Neurothrope is pathetic, but he does have a 3+ invul, so he weathered the blows and is fine. Over here, the Lich Guard joined combat against the Carnifex, got it down to 6 wounds remaining. The Carnifex finished off the Tomb Blades when he opted to attack, so they're still stuck in combat though. The Lich Guard probably going to be able to take him out, I would say. Up here, the Doomsday Ark turned, still on a reduced ballistic skill, shot into the Flying Hive Tyrant, managed to get some wounds. He has 8 left on him. So they didn't really make an effort of moving towards the relic, they're just trying to wipe the swarm out before it gets to them. So now we'll move on to Tyranid's turn 3 and see what happens. At the end of Tyranid turn 3, things are getting very messy now, with the surviving Tyranids moving in to do what they do best, which is eat things, even metal, I guess. Shooting phase was fairly abrupt, but very quickly the psychic phase was excellent. The Zoanthropes used Smite on this Immortal squad here. They got a Super Smite and murdered them all. The Super Smite is a 10 plus result on the psychic test, and then it becomes D6 mortal wounds rather than D3. Hence 5 dead immortals, so no chance of them coming back. In terms of shooting, the Gargoyles shot at the Nightbringer and got it down to 6 wounds. The Neurothrope retreated from combat to allow them to do so. Just to skip ahead to the assault, since we're over here, they assaulted the Nightbringer right afterwards, did nothing to him. He, in return, killed 2 of them. But there was other shooting, if we go down this end of the table real quick. Once again, having to shoot at the closest targets, the Tyrannocyte fired at the Deathmarks, killed 2 of them. The Horsepex moved in, successfully charged the Necron warriors. He has killed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. In return, they got him down by 1 wound to 12 total. That was 2 rounds of combat. 3 command points were used for Adrenaline Surge. Both sides have been using them for rerolls now and then. That's the first non-reroll spend on command points right there for 3. So the Tyranids have 1 left. So, oh, forgot to do their morale. Oh, do an addendum if it matters. Over here, the Trigon Prime shocked one of the Immortals, charged, took out all but 1 of the rest, so they could come back, but he is still locked in combat with 1. And there's a large gun over here missing. The Flying Hive Tyrant destroyed the Doomsday Ark, and now he is free to go where he pleases next turn. So the Tyranids are starting to come back. Now we'll see if we do an addendum about morale, but then we'll move on to Necron's turn 3. Quick addendum, although not related to morale, the warriors are fine because they're base 10, so we would have needed a 6 for them to lose 1 more. Totally forgot to cover the Lich Guard and the Carnifex fighting each other. Carnifex wasn't able to hurt the Lich Guard got the Carnifex down to 1 wound, so he's probably going down next turn. So at the end of turn 3 for the Necrons, the clash of red and green continues. As far as resurrection protocols go, 1 Immortal came back and 1 Necron warrior. The Deathmarks turned around because they're not going to outrange it, shot at the Tyrannocyte and did nothing. The Overlord moved up. He doesn't have a ranged weapon. He charged in to the Zoanthrope Brood, murdered 1 of them, and the surviving 2 were unable to do anything to him with their 1 attack. In this ongoing combat, the Horsepex took 1 wound, so he's down to 11. In return, he killed the warrior that got back up at the end of the last turn, so technically has made no progress. The Cryptek, who was back here somewhere, he has fly, so he just hopped over, and he is touching the relic. He's not infantry, so he can't move it, but he is claiming it. So if he is unharassed by the end of the match, that will be a Necron's win. Imhotep challenged the Trigon Prime and charged it. Did nothing to it. Trigon Prime opted to kill the Immortals and did so they have no chance to return now. If you're wondering why he went after them, it's because infantry can claim priority over the relic and move it. Didn't want that to happen. The Annihilation Barge moved up onto here and shot into the Winged Hive Tyrant. I think it did 1 wound or 2. Either way, he has 8 left. Over here, the Lich Guard successfully murdered the Carnifex before it could get a chance to fight them. And over here, the Deathbringer killed 2 more Gargoyles. In return, they did nothing to them. They're in Synapse though, so they won't flee. So that is it for turn 3. We'll move on, with turns getting much faster now because there's less on the table, to turn 4. End of Necron turn 4, and we'll kind of just do a sweep around the battlefield explaining what happened in the various phases. Tyrannocytes took out 2 Deathmarks in the shooting phase. In this combat over here, the Horsepex took out 2 more warriors, did not take any damage in return. Over here, the Overlord was sadly unable to do anything. In the Psychic phase, he took 2 wounds from Smite. We go over here, the Winged Hive Tyrant decided to ignore the Lich Guard because they could potentially kill him. He shot into the Annihilation Barge to no effect, but he then charged Imhotep in the back, did some wounds. The Trigon Prime also did some wounds. Imhotep is on 1 wound remaining. Gotta remember his living metal this time because we forgot that last time. Over here, the Nightbringer took no damage from the Gargoyles. He killed 2 more. Apparently his kill quota is 2 Gargoyles per turn, who knew? So there's only 4 Gargoyles remaining. Over here, the Neurothrope decided to try and block the way for the Lich Guard. He used Smite and killed one of them with D3, or a 3 on the D3. So he did that. He did not charge them though, they have to charge him if he wants them, or if they want him rather. So the turn's going very fast now. Let's see Necrons, turn 3. And by 3, I meant 4. End of the penultimate turn for the Necrons and everything was basically done in the assault phase. So we're just going to fast forward to that more or less. In this combat, the horror specs is unchanged. He killed 3 Necron warriors who may get the chance to stand up if there are still some left by the time we roll around to Necron's final turn. It was a stalemate again with the Overlord and the 3+ invulns of the 2 surviving Zonothropes. Over here, Imhotep went down and then the Trigon and the Hive Tyrant very slightly consolidated towards the relic being guarded by the Cryptic. Over here, the Neurothrope was annihilated by the Lich Guard. That would have been Slay the Warlord had the normal secondary objectives been in, but because they weren't, he gave his life for the Hive Mind. And over here, again, the kill quota, 2 Gargoyles, dead via the Nightbringer. They did nothing in return. So, it stands to reason to assume he's going to wipe out the squad next turn, as we move into the final turn for the Tyranids. End of the Tyranid's final turn, and most of what's important is around the relic, of course, because that's the only thing going to give a victory or not. But just to quickly say, the horror specs finally wiped out the surviving 4 Necron warriors, so they will not be getting back up. The Overlord here killed 1 more Zoanthrope. The Nightbringer did indeed finish off the Gargoyles and consolidated towards the important relic. Now, the Cryptic died to shooting from the Hive Tyrant and the Trigon Prime, so they did not engage in combat. So the Trigon Prime is about 1 inch, or it is 1 inch away because they had to be 1 inch away from combat. The Hive Tyrant could fly, obviously, because he has wings, so he got in behind. He's touching the relic more or less, like he is supposed to be, but his tail or his leg talon there is a little bit awkwardly placed. He's supposed to be in base-to-base contact with it. So really all that matters for the final Necron turn is whether or not he's dead, and whether or not the Annihilation Barge can fit itself in there. So let's see. So at the end of Necron turn 5, the final turn of the game, it's a little bit of a mess here, but let's basically just go over what happened. Nothing else on the battlefield matters besides this. The Annihilation Barge hopped over and is equidistant to the relic with the Hive Tyrant. The Nightbringer consolidated obviously after beating the Gargoyles. Yes, he could technically make a charge round there. He is incapable of killing the Hive Tyrant in 1 round of combat, and even if he did, it's arguable that the Trigon Prime is equidistant. You could actually maybe slightly not, but either way. So if we come back here to the relic card, essentially, infantry can carry the thing, but at the end of the battle, if a model from a player's army is carrying the relic, no it's not, so ignore that. If the relic is not being carried, then the player with a model closest to the relic wins a minor victory. They're equidistant. If both players have models equally close, the battle ends in a draw. It has to be a draw. What would have changed things? Maybe having more, the Tyranid infantry not getting mostly wiped out on turn 1 would help. The Necrons, if they had been less gunliney and more aggressive with their moving forwards to swarm the relic early, that could have made a difference. Mistakes on both sides, most likely. But yeah, I think if the Necrons had been a bit braver rather than turtling. I mean, don't get me wrong, the turtling was effective. The Necrons almost wiped out the Tyranids on turn 2, or turn 1 rather. Or well, at least the forces that were on this half of the table, that is. So they definitely had board control. If this was a normal battle, the Tyranids would eventually table the Necrons, almost certainly. The Lich Guard, the Nightbringer and the Overlord are essentially the only units besides the Annihilation Barge which will get eaten by the Trigon Prime and the Hive Tyrant. So if it was a normal battle, it would have been very bloody. It would have depended. You couldn't say one way or another because it would depend on what weapon mission type rather it was. Like if it was big guns never tire, Tyranids killed some big guns. The Necrons killed with some fast attack. So it's really hard to say. So we'll take that as a draw. And that's going to be it for this particular table layout. We're going to mix it up a little bit for next time. Do let me know what you thought in the comments below, and also what armies you would like to see fight each other next time. Might be Necrons again, still limited by the models available, so it would be the same lists, I think, yeah. But, different battleground, different layout, different missions, hopefully. Hope you enjoyed, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Ta-ta for now.